Hello everyone, what is up? Welcome back to another episode of Killer Instinct, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me here today. If you're new here, hi, my name is Savannah and I am your host of Killer Instinct. And before we get started, make sure you go ahead, hit that subscribe button. That way you never miss an episode. We post weekly here on the podcast every single Wednesday. You're not going to want to miss it. We also upload the video version onto YouTube on Wednesdays as well. So make sure you are subscribed. And if you're looking for more exclusive Killer Instinct content, you can always find that over on our Patreon. We post an additional 3 full episodes a month over there, and we end the month with an exclusive live stream as well. All the information for the Patreon can always be found in the description box below. If you're listening on Spotify, you will find those episodes embedded into the feed, or you will find it on the top of the podcast page. Now, with that all being said, let's jump into the reason we are here today, which is to discuss this case. As you can tell by the title, today we are talking about the unsolved case of Maya Millete. Now, I say unsolved because even though there are theories about this case, there are allegations, there has been an arrest made, no one has officially been convicted in this case yet. However, I wanted to discuss this case now because as the months progress, we are going to be hearing more about this case. We're going to be talking about it more over on our Patreon, and I think that this is an important case to share. That way, when the trial does begin, you guys will have an understanding as to what's going on. And I also think it's just important to get Maya's name out there. Maya is still missing, and it's important to share her story. So with this all being said, let's jump right on into it today. Maya Millete was born on May 1st in the Philippines, and in 1995, when she was 13 years old, her parents, and her 5 siblings moved to Honolulu, Hawaii, where her family settled in to begin a new life together. Maya was successful, accomplished. She was known as Superwoman. She could do it all. She was known to be kind. She was funny. She was witty. She was incredibly intelligent. She was talented in everything she set her mind to. She could sing. She could play guitar. She did martial arts. She loved any sort of outdoor adventure. Her favorite one was off-roading. She was very spontaneous. She loved being in nature, loved being in the outdoors. Maya had graduated from the Admiral Arthur Radford High School, and while she was in high school, Maya met a man named Larry Millete, and based off of the last names, I'm sure you can kind of guess where this is going. Larry and Maya met while they were both working at the same restaurant. The two hit things off very quickly. They began dating, and they eventually decided to get married. And after many conversations, both of them also decided that they were going to enlist in the Navy. And shortly after that decision, they decided to get married. Maya was the first out of her siblings to get married, and they were both still fairly very young to be getting married. They were both teenagers when they got married. So this was an adjustment for Maya's family. However, Maya seemed happy and her family was happy for her. Now, after Larry and Maya got married, they both moved to San Diego, California, and began the next chapter of their lives. Larry worked as an optician in the Naval Medical Center, and Maya worked as a supervisor contract specialist. Maya was very good at her job. She was also very unassuming as well. She was more small in stature, but she would walk in and absolutely command a room. She was incredibly skilled at her job. For a lack of a better word, Maya was a badass. She was Superwoman, and Maya's coworkers had a lot of respect for her. Maya was always encouraging her coworkers that there was no limit to their success, that they could do anything that they set their mind to, and Maya really was an inspiration for all of them. Now, Maya and Larry also had 3 children together. They had 2 daughters and a son, and they were a very active family. They were always on the go. They were always doing something, usually involving the outdoors. Again, that was something that they all really enjoyed to do together. They loved going camping. Maya was a super mom. She loved her children more than anything. She was very hands-on. She was caring. She was loving. She was always encouraging her children to try new things, and she was always teaching them something new. But unfortunately, everything changed for Maya and her family in early 2021. In January of 2021, Maya had been planning a trip for her and her family to go to Big Bear, California. This is something that they were very excited about, something that everyone was looking forward to. And Maya really was the coordinator between her and her siblings, trying to get everyone on board, getting everyone's schedules to be cohesive together, and really help coordinate this big family trip. Now, leading up to this Big Bear trip, it was also Maya's daughter's birthday. So she was communicating with her family not only about this Big Bear trip, but also about her daughter's birthday plans over text. But Maya's family started to get concerned when Maya abruptly stopped responding to any and all communication on January 7th, 2021. It was very unlike Maya to just stop responding out of nowhere. So on January 8th, the following day, Maya's brother, who also lived in San Diego, drove over to the Millete family home to check on his sister. Now, when Maya's brother got to the home, Larry told him that Maya had locked herself in their bedroom. He said that him and Maya had gotten into an argument several hours prior. Maya was just sleeping things off. She was tired and just wanted to be left alone. Maya's brother said that he did knock on the bedroom door but didn't get a reply, and he just figured that maybe Maya did want to be left alone and maybe she was sleeping, maybe she just needed to cool off. So ultimately, her brother left. But then the following day on January 9th, when Maya's family members still had not heard from her, Maya's sister named Mary Chris and her husband Richard drove back over to Maya and Larry's home again. Now this time, when they walked through the door, they noticed that the house was not in its typical state. Usually, Larry and Maya kept their house in immaculate condition. Everything was always clean, everything was organized, everything was put in its place. But on January 9th, everything looked very messy. Everything was disorganized. Things were just in disarray. It was not the normal condition of the house. But along with that, something else that they noticed was that the air conditioning was running through the home. And the reason that this stood out to them was it was mid-January. It was winter. And even though they were in San Diego, it still wasn't temperatures that called for active AC blasting through the home. So the house was very cold, and that raised alarms for the two of them as well. Now, when Mary Chris asked Larry where Maya was, Larry just told them that Maya was out hiking, that he had heard her in the house earlier that day, and that she was just out hiking and that she should be back soon. But things for Mary Chris and Richard just seemed off. No one had heard from Maya. No one had seen Maya. She wasn't responding to calls or texts, and they really just weren't taking Larry's word for it. So on January 9th, 2021, Mary Chris officially filed a missing persons report for her sister Maya. Now, initially, police did drive over to the Millete home, and they walked through the house and spoke to Larry as well as Mary Chris and Richard, but there really didn't seem to be a huge sense of urgency from the authorities. Mary Chris said it didn't seem like police were super concerned that Maya was missing. However, they did take the report down, and Maya was officially considered a missing person. It wasn't until the following day on January 10th when Maya's family's biggest fears became reality, when Maya did not show up for her daughter's birthday party. Maya's daughter's birthday party was scheduled on January 10th. It had been something that Maya had been talking to her family about, something that she had been coordinating with her family, and for her to not show up for her daughter's birthday party, they knew that something was very, very wrong. Larry still did throw the birthday party with the help of Maya's family, but again, they knew that something terrible must have happened to Maya for her to not be there for this birthday party. This is just not something that Maya would have missed. But according to Maya's family, Larry was very much acting like this was just another normal day. And no one could tell if this was because Larry was just trying to put on a brave face and just be there for his daughter, show up for his kids, and not give them the impression that anything was wrong, or if he really wasn't concerned about his missing wife. He wasn't acting stressed. If anything, he was acting very laid back. Richard said that he was in sweatpants. He was acting very blasé about the entire situation and never spoke about Maya. He never brought up Maya's name. He never brought Maya up into conversation, and it just felt very odd. Everything just seemed uncertain, and it seemed like people were almost walking on eggshells around Larry about Maya because he was not bringing it up. But this birthday party ultimately ended up turning into a search party at the end of the night. All of Maya's family was at this birthday party, and as time progressed and the sun was setting and the birthday party was coming to a close, Maya's family, considering the fact that they were all there, her friends were there, they figured why not start looking for her. So they made posters and flyers, they started searching the neighborhood, they were looking everywhere they could. And this progressed into larger search parties. It progressed into volunteers coming and trying to help locate Maya. They were searching the hiking trails that Maya would typically hike, but again, no one could find Maya anywhere. Now, initially in the investigation, police stated that Larry was being very cooperative. He was speaking to detectives, and he told them that he didn't know what happened to Maya. That was the big question here. Everyone was looking at Larry like, when is the last time you spoke to Maya? When is the last time you saw Maya? And according to Larry, he also said that similarly to everyone else, he was not able to get a hold of her. He told authorities that him and Maya got into an argument on January 7th, and that when he woke up the next morning on January 8th, he heard Maya in the house. He heard her walking around in the hallways in the kitchen with the kids. However, he did not physically see her. He said that Maya left that morning on her own, and he just figured that Maya was going to want some alone time, cool off after the argument that they got into, and he assumed that she was going for a hike because that was something that she typically did when she wanted to be alone. She would go for a hike. It was something that she would do to clear her head, but it wasn't because Maya told him that she was doing that. Larry was just assuming. But according to Larry, he said that January 7th was also the last time that he saw his wife, because on January 8th, he never physically saw her. He just claims that he heard her and that he never heard from her after that. They stopped communicating after that. Now, this is when a man named Billy Little comes into play in this case. And Billy Little was the husband of one of Maya's coworkers. So Maya had a coworker whose husband was Billy Little. And Billy Little used to work as a criminal defense investigator for the Navy, but he also was a private investigator. So when Maya's coworker got word of her disappearance, this coworker asked her husband, Billy Little, to look into what was going on, and he agreed to do it. And it was something that Maya's family was eagerly wanting as well. They wanted as much help as they could get. They felt like the police were not being super active in the investigation as they should have been. So because of this, they hired Billy as a private investigator for the case. And Billy began conducting somewhat of his own investigation. And the first part of his investigation was going to Larry and Maya's home, which was the last place that Maya was seen. Now, after showing Larry his Navy credentials, Larry did allow Billy into the home. Billy walked through the house, and he did notice a few things that stood out to him. First of all, Billy noticed that all of the windows in the house were open, and again, alongside that, the AC was also running. And the reason that this stood out to Billy was because it appeared as if Larry was trying to air out the house. He wanted to get airflow into the house. He wanted to get whatever smell could have possibly been in the house out of the house. So that was something that stood out to Billy. And upon searching the rest of the home, Billy also noticed that in Larry and Maya's bedroom, there were recently patched up holes on the bedroom door and in the wall of the bedroom as well. Now, Billy did ask Larry about these holes, and according to Larry, he stated that both of these came from Maya. He claimed that Maya got mad and she punched a hole in the door and in the wall. Billy was skeptical about this to begin with. However, he was very skeptical specifically about the hole that was in the bedroom, so the hole that was on the wall, because it just seemed too high for Maya to have reached. It just seemed very unlikely that she was the one that caused this hole in the wall. And because of that, it just made Larry's story not very believable given the circumstances of what was going on. Now, at this point, Billy also went door to door throughout Larry and Maya's Maya's neighborhood, asking for ring camera footage from any of the neighbors on the night of January 7th and the early morning hours of January 8th. And when he received this footage, it was very, very telling. At 10:30 p.m. on January 7th, there was ring camera footage that overheard the Millete children playing in their backyard. Now, there were many reasons that this stood out to Billy as being odd. First of all, according to neighbors, it was not normal or it was not typical for the Millete children to be playing outside at this time of night. Along with that, it was a school night, so to have the children playing outside at this time of night didn't seem very practical. And it was January. It was cold outside. Billy said that the weather was in the temperatures of the high 40s, so to have them just playing outside didn't seem likely, and it raised suspicion. But not only that, just about 30 minutes prior, so at 10 p.m., that same ring audio footage caught what appeared to sound like 8 gunshots going off. Billy spoke with the neighbors who did remember hearing the sounds, and the neighbors claimed that when they heard it, they thought that there were gunshots going off. However, they heard the Millete children outside shortly after this, so they figured that things were fine. Now, along with that, the neighbor who lived across the street from the Milletes, they also had video footage on their ring camera that showed on January 8th at approximately 5:30 a.m., Larry was seen backing their black Lexus car into the garage. So he gets into the car, he backs the car into the garage, he got out of the car, and what he did inside of the garage is unknown because no one is able to see what he did. However, we know that he backed the car into the garage and then left the house at approximately 6:15 a.m. and didn't return for another 11 and a half hours. He was gone all day. So with this information, this is the time where Billy also began taking a closer look at Maya and Larry's relationship and saw that there were cracks among the surface of this relationship for over a year leading up to Maya's disappearance. According to Maya's family, they claim that in the year 2020, Larry and Maya's marriage was definitely going through a very, very rough time. Larry would call Maya's family complaining about their marriage, saying that Maya had changed into this different person. Larry was stating that Maya was going through a midlife crisis. Her social life was more active. She was going out more often. She had single friends that Larry didn't like. And while Maya's family did acknowledge that Maya was evolving in this time, it wasn't anything that was negative. She was incredibly successful in her career, and she did have a social life. Those two things did exist, but it didn't call for the type of response that Larry was giving it. Friends of Maya's also claimed that Larry was incredibly controlling. If they were out with a group of friends and Maya and Larry were out as well, Larry was always just off to the side observing, to the point where friends say it was very unsettling to see. Billy was also able to see that over time in 2020, Larry began tracking Maya. He was tracking her spending. He was also tracking all of her social media accounts. Maya had absolutely no privacy whatsoever. Now, a big issue in their marriage was the fact that Larry was constantly accusing Maya of having multiple affairs. He was claiming that when she went out, she was having affairs. He was claiming that she was having affairs with different coworkers. He even emailed Maya's boss at one point, claiming that Maya was having affairs with her coworkers and she should be fired. Now, I do want to mention that there is no evidence that points to any of this. There is no evidence that proves that Maya was seeing anyone else, but Larry was not able to let this go. And during this time, Larry was pulling out all of the stops to, in his mind, try and redirect Maya back to him. He was taking her to church, thinking that taking her to church and bringing her closer to God would in turn bring her closer to him. He would also text Maya's family different Bible verses about adultery, but again, there was no evidence that showed that Maya was having affairs. And the tighter that Larry was trying to hold on to Maya, the more Maya was pulling away from Larry. It was having the opposite effect. Maya was recognizing that she did not want to be in this marriage anymore. She didn't want to be in a controlling marriage, and she was beginning to consider divorcing Larry in 2020. And when Larry sensed this is when he became more desperate. And this is when Larry began seeking out witchcraft and casting spells. Larry would purchase these spells from spellcasters online. I'm sure some of you have seen, there are many people online on websites like Etsy, for example, who will cast spells for you for X amount of money. You can purchase spells online, and Larry started doing that in the hopes that it would rectify his marriage. He even wrote a review for one of the people that he had hired to cast a spell on Maya, and in regards to this spellcaster's work, Larry said, quote, "She is easy to work with. She is kind, professional, and courteous. My casting has not yet manifested, but I'm really hoping and counting on it. She offers a recast after a month if it hasn't manifested, which is a plus because I really need it to," end quote. And Larry did not stop there. Larry also created his own altar where he would cast his own spells over Maya and over their marriage. There is one photo in particular that was found on Larry's cell phone where Larry had taken a printed out photo of him and Maya. He had placed it on this altar. He had surrounded it with candles, and he had also taken blood and sprayed blood over the picture of him and Maya. Now, this was way prior to her disappearance. This was months and months before Maya went missing, so it was unclear if this was Larry's blood, if this was Maya's blood, if this was animal blood, if this was fake blood. We don't really know, but we do know that it was there. Now, by December of 2020, Larry and Maya were sleeping in separate bedrooms, but this is when Maya noticed something that was incredibly disturbing for her. She had noticed that Larry had taken little speakers and put them throughout the room that she was sleeping in. He would hide them in the nightstand, or he would hide them in the dresser. And when Maya confronted Larry about this, asking why there were speakers in the bedroom, this is when Larry admitted that he had been playing subliminal messages to Maya while she was sleeping, hoping that it would draw Maya back to him. And the messages that he was playing were more so hypnotherapy. He was finding different marriage hypnotherapies that he could on Spotify or on Apple Podcasts. He was really reaching wherever he could to try and, in his mind, reel Maya back towards him. And it was at this point when Maya officially decided that her marriage was over. She had texted a friend telling her that she had made her decision and that she was going to move forward with a divorce. Everything was too much for her. Larry had reached a new level of what seemed to be an obsessiveness and almost a stalking of his own wife. Maya also informed her family on her decision pertaining to the status of her marriage right before New Year's in 2020. So right before 2021, that is when Maya informed her family that she was going to be divorcing Larry. And according to Maya's family, they said that they were very supportive of Maya. They wanted her to do what was best for her, but they also encouraged her to be safe and take caution while moving forward in these proceedings of getting a divorce, considering the lengths that Larry had already gone to. And what we now know is that on January 7th, the last day that Maya was heard from, Maya had made an appointment with a divorce attorney. She was on the phone making an appointment with a divorce lawyer at 3:48 p.m., and she was seen arriving home for the last time at 4:22 p.m. Police were able to see, as well as Billy Little, the private investigator, that Maya was never seen leaving her house again. She was seen arriving to her home on January 7th, but she was never seen leaving after that. Now, on January 23rd, the police did their own official search of the Millete home, and this came right after Billy Little had uncovered new tips in the case and shared those with authorities. And this was now 2 weeks after Maya's disappearance. And when police did this, they did discover that Larry had many firearms. Police seized 2 handguns, a rifle, and a shotgun, and they also discovered that Larry had had an illegal assault weapon. On January 26th, police served Larry with another search warrant. This one was for the GPS system in Larry's Lexus that he was seen driving on the morning of January 8th. And it was at this time Larry was starting to pick up police's suspicions that were rising against him. So he hired a lawyer and refused to speak with police any further. So he stopped cooperating completely at this point. By summer of 2021, Larry was officially named a person of interest in Maya's disappearance. And on October 19th of 2021, Maya Millete was officially arrested for the murder of Maya. Now, even after Larry's arrest, there was more information that was beginning to come out about him and Maya's marriage. Police learned that the witchcraft that Larry had been seeking out to help strengthen his marriage was used for more than just that. They saw that Larry had been enlisting different spellcasters to actually cause harm to Maya. So what it appeared was that initially Larry was seeking out these spellcasters to help rectify his marriage, to help bring Maya and him back together. However, when that wasn't working, he then shifted gears and wanted these spellcasters to actually cause harm to Maya instead. In an email with the spellcaster, Larry said, quote, "Please punish Maya and incapacitate her enough so she can't leave the house. It's time to take the gloves off," end quote. And the day that Maya was last seen, on January 7th, police were able to see that Larry reached out to multiple spellcasters via email saying that he was ready to snap and that he was shaken inside. Now, the arrest warrant for Larry also stated that Maya had confided in a friend of hers that Larry had been physically violent with her before. Maya told this friend that Larry had choked her to the point of unconsciousness, so there had been violence in the relationship before her disappearance. But despite Larry's arrest, Maya still had not been found. To this day, her body has not been recovered. It does not mean that police have stopped looking. It does not mean that Maya's family has stopped looking. After the arrest, the search parties continued, and Maya's family is still looking for her to this day. The GPS from the black Lexus told authorities that 2.5 hours away from the Millete home, Larry had put their home address back in and began driving home. Now, what this did is it told authorities that there was now a range of where to look. So police and Maya's family began looking in that 2.5 hour range area in all directions and tried to pinpoint the areas that Larry was most familiar with. And they did land on several deserted hiking areas that Maya and Larry had visited before. So they have been actively searching those areas. However, unfortunately, have not found Maya. And as devastating as it is, Maya's family is also aware that at this point, they're just looking for her remains. They just want to bring her home and put her to rest. They are convinced that Larry harmed Maya and took her life, and they are just looking to bring her home. Now, as far as the legal proceedings go, Larry has pled not guilty to the murder of Maya, as well as an additional illegal firearm possession charge. He's pled not guilty to both charges, and Larry's defense initially tried to argue that Larry was not competent to stand trial. However, a judge has ruled against this and found that Larry is competent to stand trial. And the judge ruled that the trial was set to begin on July 7th of this year, so just in a few weeks. However, Larry's attorney has recently requested an extension due to financial hardship, and the trial has now been moved to January of 2026. Larry initially had a private attorney that he hired. However, he no longer could afford it, so he had to change to a public defender in 2023. And the public defender requested the delay in the trial in order for them to have time to review the case and properly represent Larry. Now, the biggest concern for this case from the prosecution standpoint is the fact that Maya's body has not yet been recovered. And trying to convict someone with murder with no body is no easy task. It's definitely not impossible, as we saw with last week's episode, but it is not not easy by any means. And regarding those 8 gunshot-like sounds that were heard from the Millete home on the night of January 7th, the forensic analyzer reviewed the clip and stated that the audio was not clear enough to accurately depict whether or not these were gunshots. So even though they sounded like it, it's not for fact. Now, the prediction from other legal officials regarding this trial has been that the defense was going to argue that either Maya is not dead, or if she is, it is from someone else that was not Larry. They're going to paint Maya in a way that shows that she was straying away from her husband. She was having this crazy social life. She was going out and partying. She was having different affairs with different men. And that it's possible that someone else out there had the motive and desire to kill her, but Larry did not. They're going to try and paint Larry as a husband who was just wanting his wife back. Now, the prosecution, on the other hand, will obviously argue that Larry was in fact the one that killed Maya. They are going to talk about everything leading up to the murder, all of the marital issues, the casting of the spells, the speakers in the room, the conversations that Maya had been having with her friends. They're definitely going to talk about the day that Maya was last seen and the fact that she contacted a divorce attorney. They're going to talk about those potential 8 gunshots. They're probably going to bring up the fact that Larry was gone on January 8th for 11 and a half hours and no one knows where he was. That is possibly the angle that the prosecution is going to be taking in this case as well, but we will have to wait and see on all of this. Like I said, we're going to keep tabs on this case. We're going to talk about it over on Patreon in our live stream next week, and I'm certainly going to watch as the trial unfolds and give you guys my opinion over there as well. So with that being said, you guys, let me know what you think about this case. It is a crazy one. It is wild. It is twisted, and it is tragic because Maya does not deserve whatever had happened to her. No matter what happened to her, she did not deserve what happened to her. And it is unfortunate that to this day, she's still out there. She is still not home with her family. She has not been laid to rest yet. And I hope that one day that she is able to get the justice that she deserves. But with that being said, you guys, that's going to be all for me today. Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of Killer Instinct. Again, if you're new here, hi, my name is Savannah. I'm your host. Make sure, if you have not already, that you go ahead and hit that subscribe button. That way you never miss an episode. Like I mentioned in the beginning, we post weekly here on the podcast every single Wednesday. You're not going to want to miss it. We also upload the video version on YouTube on Wednesdays as well. Make sure you are subscribed and go check out the Patreon if you haven't. Like I said, all details are in the description box below. I will be back next week with a brand new one for you guys. And until then, stay safe. Bye, guys.